BT Sport Pods.
He came in and, said he was a special one, and sure enough, the results proved that he was.
Like, he had everyone eating at the palm of his hands.
They had a strong spine in that squad. Drogba, Lampard, Terry, Cech.
Welcome to the Premier League Storybook with me, Jake Humphrey. It's time for Chapter 9, The Special Ones. The battle between Manchester United and Arsenal had dominated the Premier League conversation in the early 2000s, captivating fans and pundits alike with a furious tussle of some of the greatest players the division had ever seen. It would have to be something truly special to break them up at the top of the table. Something really special. Enter Chelsea. The Blues had seen a huge change since the dawn of the Premier League. They went from cars in front of the old shed to playing host to Ruud Gullit, Gianfranco Zola and Gianluca Vialli in just a few years, winning cup competitions at home and abroad. Nothing, however, prepared English football for Roman Abramovich buying the West London club in 2003 and embarking on the most incredible transfer spree ever seen. They finished second behind Arsenal's Invincibles team in their first season under Russian ownership, despite knocking the Gunners out of the Champions League. On June the 2nd, 2004, a young Portuguese manager named Jose Mourinho took the helm. Fresh from winning that Champions League with Porto, he immediately declared, "I am the special one." What he created was one of the most dominant teams since the division's inception in 1992. We'll hear from Joe Cole, who arrived in that unprecedented spending splurge in 2003 and became one of Chelsea's key players.
First, though, Ray Parlour was part of the Arsenal team that were ousted from the top of the league by their London rivals. Here's what he made of Jose Mourinho's side.
Oh, they were a good side, very, very good, very strong. Jose Mourinho, again, he's a little bit like Arsene Wenger. No one really knew him when he first came in, but you could see the presence he had on the side, and the players he brought in was very special. Had a system to play. It was good to see, really. You could see the manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, he had that little bit of friction with Arsene Wenger because he knew this guy is going to put a team together that can challenge our reign as the champions, and which we did. And then all of a sudden, after 2005, it was Jose Mourinho now, and Ferguson, because Man United was still a great side, and probably a few of the guys were leaving from Arsenal. You had obviously Patrick leaving, me and Martin had left the year before, Carnu left, a couple of guys were leaving. So slowly it was, getting new players in, and suddenly Chelsea were the team that everybody was watching and saying, "Oh, suddenly Chelsea Man United now instead of Arsenal Man United." So, but that's how football is.
Mourinho was one of the biggest arrivals ever seen in the Premier League and arguably started this modern cult of the manager that we enjoy today. His fellow bosses were watching on with interest. Here's Harry Redknapp on what he made of Mourinho's arrival.
He had a massive impact, and he came in, didn't he, full of confidence, charisma. Everybody loved him. At that time, he came in and, said he was a special one, and sure enough, the results proved that he was. He had great players at Chelsea. Have a look at them players. It's a great situation to walk into. He wasn't exactly walking into a team that was in dire straits, struggling at the bottom of the league. When you've got all them lads that they had, that team, they had team after team. It was a great opportunity for him, and he grabbed it with both hands. And, you look at his record, he's up there with the great managers in the history of football.
Paul Scholes was used to dominating with Manchester United since he came into the team in the mid-90s. He rates that Chelsea side as some of his hardest ever competitors.
Where did they rank? I'd say just behind Arsenal. Very close. Chelsea were brilliantly organised, brilliantly coached. I think Jose Mourinho coming in was special. You remember him coming to the Premier League for the first time. That confidence he had, that he brought to his team was special. I loved him. I loved watching his press conference. It was going to be entertaining. And he brought what he said he was going to do. He actually brought a brilliant Chelsea team. I think they were probably more physical, more structured than an Arsenal team. Probably not. I'd say Arsenal probably had better quality footballs in the team, but Chelsea still had some real quality in their team. But they had a structure, a strength. You always felt as them as a big, strong team that could deal with most things. And they're never going to be a Manchester City footballing team, I don't think. But they were effective and they were very good. They had big game players in Frank and Drogba who won them a lot of games. So it was a new rivalry and probably took a little bit of time to get used to it.
Rio Ferdinand echoes his former Manchester United teammates' sentiments.
Yeah, they're right up there. Again, they could win different ways as well. They could blow you away with individual brilliance. But they're as good as anybody in terms of standing there and going toe-to-toe with you as well. They had a strong spine in that squad. Drogba, Lampard, Terry, Cech. Terry and Carvalho really in Cech. It's a real strong spine. And you knew games with them were always going to be tough. And added to that group of players, you've got a manager who had a real belief to go and win and hurt teams. And again, it was at the beginning of finding out who Jose Mourinho was really, and he was a massive part in any success they had around that time.
It was like nothing the Premier League had ever seen. But what was it like in the eye of the storm? Joe Cole secured a big money move to Stamford Bridge from West Ham in 2003 and experienced Jose Mourinho's revolution. Let's hear him wind back the clock. All right, Joe. So we'll need you to cast your mind back for this episode.
Okay.
So look, we're here to talk about the Chelsea of Jose Mourinho, but let's go back to before that. So did you support Chelsea as a kid?
As a kid, I did, Jake. I was a Chelsea supporter simply for the reason, I think it's been I've widely said it. My mum and dad wasn't big football fans.
Yeah.
Although my mum would profess to be a Chelsea fan, she went to QPR and Chelsea. She was an only child, and her dad took her to either or. So she liked QPR, she liked Chelsea. Anyway, I lived in Lisson Green Estate with my mum and dad just off the Edgware Road, which is, I suppose Chelsea's the closest team. But it was only my mate at school who took us to a game. His dad took us to a game. I had no football on in my house, and I would have been about 10, I would imagine, and sat on the benches, and he took us every week. I absolutely loved it, so that was the reason Chelsea. And it was unfashionable because I then quickly moved to Kentish Town, which is North London territory, and all my dad's family are Arsenal and Tottenham, mad, a lot of them. So I was the only Chelsea fan. Me and my pal were the only Chelsea fans we knew. So times change.
And you obviously ended up at West Ham. Like, was there, before the West Ham move and before, was there any possibility of joining Chelsea right at the start of your career?
Yeah, I mean, we'll say start of a career sounds crass. As a child, at 12, the way it was back then, all of the scouts would, they'd come and give my dad a card after a game. Can we come for a trial? And I was just like living the dream. I'd go and play for Tottenham on a Friday night, and I'd go over and see Arsenal on a Saturday and West Ham on a Sunday, and I'd go training. And luckily my dad was because of the job he had, he was able to sort of ferry us about, and it was exciting for them ferrying us about. And I could I'd go to Arsenal, I get the Arsenal kit, sometimes I go to a game, they take me to a game, and then I see Ian Wright, and I was living it. Like, look back at it now, it was like literally the dream for any young kid. And I actually didn't want that, because I love football so much, I didn't want that section to end. It was sort of 2 years where I was going round from the age of maybe 11 to 12 till 13, 14, where I was going around playing for everyone and loving everything. And then we had to make a decision at 14 because you got to sign schoolboy forms. And I didn't want to make a decision. I wanted to carry on doing it, play for everyone. But West Ham was where I was happiest. Like the best team. We had great young players, and unluckily enough for my mum and dad, it was actually the furthest to drive for training. So although my mum and dad went, "Oh yeah, wherever you want to go, we'll take you," they sort of went, when I went out the room, like, "Oh, they did it," and they did it twice a week and once on the weekend for 2 years.
Life of a parent.
Yeah.
So you end up at West Ham.
Yeah.
Things go well. You get into the first team. You're lauded. You're applauded. The West Ham fans love you. Do you remember the emotion or the feeling when you knew that Chelsea were interested and there was an opportunity to join Chelsea?
It was a strange time because two things there. The West Ham, my first experience with West Ham was great. I had a great time, loved it. Like you said, you go from a kid to being a Premier League footballer and lauded and playing for England and everything. But the West Ham were relegated, and I was captain at 21. So I knew I had to leave because the club needed to sell me financially, first and foremost. And second of all, I had aspirations then. I'd been in and around England squad for 2 years. I'd seen Rio move on. I'd seen Frank move on. So I was like, right, okay, I need to move on. And then there was talk of other clubs. And the Chelsea thing was really strange because it was the time of Roman Abramovich coming in. And you didn't know, it was like, you didn't know whether they was interested in you or they were just buying everyone. But
yeah, it's a strange feeling that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because when a club buys one player in the summer to transform the team, that is hugely flattering. Is it less flattering when it's like, oh, now they're buying them, oh, and them, and they're linked with them, and it sort of takes the glow away, maybe slightly?
Yeah, I mean, I went from being a big fish at West Ham, and then the Chelsea coming. It was actually I was about to. It was a week before the season starts in the Championship, so I was like, right, okay, I'm gonna stay. I'm ready to go. None of the other clubs that have been talking have made a bid, and then Chelsea just come in, and it was literally 9 a.m. We've accepted a bid from Chelsea. You need to go over to talk to him. So we drove over to Kings Road. The dad of my agent went in and spoke to him, and we just sat down and had a bit of breakfast. Within 2 hours, the deal had been thrashed out.
So you didn't want to be in the room and have those conversations as well?
I was 21.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. No. I mean, I said I trusted my dad and my agent to get my value, to get me what I'm worth. And genuinely, I was not interested in what was getting paid.
Really?
I was not interested at that age. No. It's like, I wanted to play football. I was like, right, I want to play in the Champions League. I want to win trophies, and I want to play for England, and I want to win the World Cup, and I want to do this, blah. So, in my head, I was logical enough to know, well, if I achieve all them things, I'm going to be rich anyway, and I'm a very simple man. I'm not. I've never been extravagant. I like. This is important, especially in the current climate. You can't disregard money and finances, and I like to be able to provide for my children and my children's children, everything what we work for. But it was not about the money. And so when I didn't even have the time to think of it as Chelsea. It was just like, oh, it's exciting at Chelsea, and then that would be a good club to play for. Do you know what I mean? And
had you shared those thoughts about wanting to be involved and playing and all of that? Like, had you had that conversation with someone at the club?
No, well, no, but that was one of my imperatives. That's the only thing I said to my agent. Listen, I'm not signing for a club until I speak to the manager,
right? Which
was Claudio Ranieri, because I need to look in his eyes. And then once we agreed the finances, I went, right, let me speak to Claudio. So we went. I think played a friendly that night, and he met me at a service station.
It's all glamour.
No, it was but a hotel on a service station. I can't even remember where it was. Obviously somewhere around the M25, and we sat down. And looking back on it now, he played it brilliantly because he didn't commit to anything to me. My mind, I'd already signed for Chelsea. I was already pictured myself in a Chelsea kit, playing with your, Verons and your, Jimmy Floyd and Damien Duff had signed, and Marcel Desailly, JT Frank, all that, So my mind was there, but he sort of just said, look, I was like, where do you want to play me? And he said, well, and he said about 4 or 5 systems and put me in different places. He went,
covering all his bases.
Covering all bases. And he went, you're my key. And he said to me, you're my key.
Nice.
I said, he said, when the door is unlocked, you're my key. And in the end, he just kept saying it. I was like, all right, well, I'm your key then. So, but my heart had already gone there. I would never have gone, unless that meeting would have gone really bad and I would have got a really bad vibe from him. I would have walked away. And then the next day, signed the deal and trained, and that was it. Start of the journey.
What are your memories of that first season at Chelsea? Is there a game or a moment where you realised that it was different?
The game, like the first time warming up at Stamford Bridge, and then because you're very much professional, you're very much, you do your job. you got drive, you got ambition, you do ABC and you'll achieve this. And in the very first warming up, and I could see where I sat as a kid, which was quite, and it just caught my eye, and I could see another kid sat in that seat, and it was quite, wow. And then the smell, I'm sure the catering had changed over the 15 years that have passed, 10 years that have passed, but it smelled the same. So the smells, seeing where I used to sit, and then playing the song, The Liquidator, that come on, all these little things, so music, smells, and then you feel like the emotions coming up.
How did you not let that get the better of you?
Because you're professional.
Right.
It's very rarely like, but that was one of the few occasions in my career where emotion had come up and you have to push it down, because it's such a hard journey for any kid to make it as a footballer. That's why I respect every professional footballer, because I know the path that you need to tread, and I know that there's so many things you can slip up on. It's like, what it's like when you watch like one of the, it's just a mad analogy just comes to me, but when you watch the Discovery Channel or something and you see like the little turtles trying to make the beach, and they don't know how, there's only one of them going to make it, and they're getting away and they're struggling. Do you know what I'm saying? So do you get that, you're that one kid who's got there and you're doing it at the club that you supported, you're so lucky, and you should never ever let that leave you.
Really nice. Let's talk about the actual football. There was a moment where you beat the Arsenal Invincibles.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people look at that as the moment that the kind of the pendulum and the momentum swung towards Chelsea. It was the Champions League quarterfinals as well. Yeah. Ranieri in tears on the touchline. What are your memories of that game?
Oh, mate, that was a great game. I was on the bench for that game, and my mate Wayne Bridge obviously scored the goal, and it felt different. So, but I actually come on. It was 1-1, and we was growing in the game. So like over the two legs, they were so much better at the start, and then sort of at the 180 minutes, 190 minutes of football was getting towards the end. We were getting stronger. So it's like seeing the passing of the torch in a game. There's always big moments in football, and we were getting stronger. And these players that we lauded, the Vieiras, the Pires, great players, we were now able. Henry was able to compete with them, and it was sort of, you could see the pendulum swinging, and I come off the bench to be the key for Claudio, 1-1, and I've done something. A ball come into me. I remember it. I don't remember many games. I think I'd spun Lauren, or might have been Gilberto Silva, got to the byline, cut it back to Good Johnson. He missed the chance, and he never misses the chance. Ida was a fantastic finisher, and that would have been the moment. Do you know what I mean? So, and I think, it'd been nice to have played a massive part in that, what felt like was a big, which historic shows it's a massive moment for Chelsea, but then that would take it away from my mate Bridgie. You couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. He's fullback, didn't score goals, great player, underrated player. Anyone who plays with him will tell you that. And then, but when the ball went into Ida and he laid it onto Bridgie, and then I've seen him. He's a great finisher actually, and he just slid it away, and it was like deathly silence in Highbury, and then we could hear the Chelsea fans, and then I could see Bridgie's face, and actually he didn't score many goals, but he scored one against Portsmouth a few months earlier against Southampton boy playing against Portsmouth, and it was like this insane emotion coming over his face, and he sort of like he just lit the place up. But then we got into in Highbury, and it's tight, and then the owners come in, the music was playing, and it was just like we felt we'd arrived as a team, and we'd be taken seriously, and we could compete with Arsenal, who were the best side at the time. And it was a pivotal time. You speak to any Chelsea fan around that era, and that game was when I think we all sort of realised that we could do something special as a group of players.
And we can't forget what Claudio Ranieri did for Chelsea to start this story. But obviously there was then that period where it was kind of an open secret in football, certainly among, your average football fan, which is what I was at that time, that he was going to go. The whole dead man walking conversation about Claudio Ranieri. What was that like in the dressing room among the players in that period? That must have been strange.
Well, from my perspective as a younger kid, younger lad, 21, 22, a 5-year contract. So, I mean, with me, it was just like, just win the next game, get into this team. If I can break into this team with all these world superstars, they've signed the cream of world football. I need to just get in the team, be useful, be useful, make something happen. So I was hanging off anything Claudio says. You know, he improved me as a player, definitely, in that year. I learned a lot from all the senior players around me. But it didn't, I wouldn't say it bothered me, but I think the difference is with Claudio, as much as I think the semi-finals against Monaco when I think the owner probably decided that he wasn't a man to take us to that next level, because the substitutions were a bit sort of, they didn't affect the game. A game where we could have gone to Monaco and probably got a draw, which was more than capable of, and played a bit more pragmatic. He opened up and that was so unlike Claudio. You know, we chased the game. We didn't need to chase. We had the home leg. And then, so I think them decisions at that level, semi-finals, finals, I think made Roman's decision that he wanted to change him. I think that was the moment. Do you know, that first, not even the second leg, because I think even if we would have got through the second leg, which we could have done, I think maybe he would have still got changed. He would have still changed him because of that. Right. Yeah. And
what was it like for you as a bunch of players, though? Because, you know, he was the guy that brought you to the club.
Yeah. I felt great. I felt a huge debt to him. And he was, you know, I didn't have the relationship with him that John had or Frank had, who'd been there for years. Like, I was the new kid in the team. But I felt like he had if he would have stayed on, he had a plan for me. Like, I finished the season. I think that season I played 50 games, 25 off the bench, 25 starting in all competitions. Someone said this to me. I know this because I was talking to someone else about it the other day. You know, but by the end of the year, I think I started the last 7 or 8 games, Champions League semi-final. So, you know, what I'd expected, a young player come to the club. By the end of the year, the big games of the season, I was playing at the end of the season. So I felt like it was a tick box thing for me. I thought, right, if Claudio would have stayed, I think I would have started for him the next season. I might be wrong, but if you finish the season like I did, I played my best football at the end of the season. So, yeah, it was disappointing when he left, because you know you're starting, like any footballer, you're starting from fresh again. I'd made some ground.
Mm. And what did you know about Jose Mourinho when the name first got mentioned and bandied about?
Well, young, exciting, grey coat.
running down the
touchline. Yeah. Sticking it up Manchester United, which we all quite enjoyed. You know, because they were the team at the time, wasn't they? Like over the, so yeah, but you didn't know a lot about him. Right. You know, didn't know a lot about him. And
what was the first meeting with him like?
The first meeting was brilliant. He come to was away with England at the Lowry at Manchester, and he wanted to come and meet the English lads, which would have been me, Frank, John. I don't know if Glenn Johnson was there, Wayne Bridge. And basically, he just said, got us down. He said, look, I'm your manager. This is when we're going to be starting the season. This is what I'm all about. The only thing I remember from it, taking from that meeting, was him saying, look, you know, you're all fantastic players. I'm looking forward to working for you, but none of you are winners. We hadn't won anything.
Yeah. And you said it that.
He said it like that. He said, listen, if you follow me and do what I say, I'm a winner. I will. So you're like, that's brave, you know, for a young manager who'd never played the game. But by the way, you know, we look back 20 years ago, that was still frowned upon. Now it's like, it doesn't seem to be a thing, you know, where you come from, it's about what you're doing now. But even back then, he could have walked into a room full of 4 or 5 England internationals and we'd have gone, what's this geezer talking about? Do you know what I mean? But immediately he said it with such conviction that you believed in him. And leaders do that, you know. That's why I read a lot of books about leadership. I think there's something inside certain people that it's just natural. They're born to do it. You can improve on your things and your communication skills and everything, but he certainly had something that I don't think it was learned. I think it's innate in him, like that's competitor, this leader.
And it's one thing, him being a born winner. It's something totally different, and the true brilliance of certain people when he can then make those around him into winners. So what was the difference in the culture or the atmosphere or the feeling around the training ground in that sort of first Premier League winning season? Was it something that you could put your finger on? Or was it kind of a more ethereal?
No. Practically. Every team that trains now, that I think is with this revolutionary times in football. You know, people say, Arsene Wenger come in, as crass as it sounds, says like, oh, stop the lads drinking alcohol and having, you know, fry-ups and eating properly. And that was a revolution, you know, what body weight and things like that. That was a revolution. Now you look back and go, well, of course we know that, but English football wasn't that. It was a drinking culture. Blah, blah, blah. But then when Jose came in, he brought the Barcelona method of training, which he'd learnt, you know, in terms of, you know, the tactical breakdown. And it was small-sided games, large-sided games, all done on the clock, moving from one station to another. Basically, English football was, but before then, was a little bit of shape, a little bit of shooting, keep ball, game, like in various guises. But he sort of broke it down. So the first 2 weeks we did a lot of, it was about intensity and transition. And you could tell that was the theme running through his training. So it wasn't a feeling. There was something tangible happening that you could see. It was like, wow, this training's different. Usually you turn up for pre-season, you're like running round a pitch for a week.
Run until you're sick.
All that kind of stuff. Yeah. Which is not science. Sports science would tell you it's not conducive to producing footballers. And so that was tangible. That's what he done. And I loved it. Everything was competitive. Even the warm-up, you know, everything was competitive. And he got that message across. And then from his press conferences, he oozed. He had everyone eating at the palm of his hands. You know, it was mental how he did it. He just give the journalists just enough, you know, and then they went away and they was like, he walked into a room, he had the presence about him, all the stuff that's not tangible, that you can't tell, you know, and he sort of, he had that as well. So he had the charisma and he had this new way of training.
And I think it's a myth to think that when someone comes in and moves everyone to a higher level, everyone moves with them. The truth is, the only people that move to the higher level are those that are capable of it. And, you know, you had amazing players in that Chelsea team. But I'm interested in you and how hard it was to keep up with the sort of like the group at the front, basically, to like react to this. You know, you were still relatively new at Chelsea.
Yeah.
So what are your memories of that, like fighting to be part of this new revolution?
No, it's something I've always done.
Yeah.
It was nothing new. It wasn't like I turned up for this, right, new manager, I'm going to show him. And so for me, it was something I've always done. I've always bought into. Again, you know, I worked out quite quickly, you know, from my smarts that I wasn't one of his generals. Like at West Ham, you know, I would have been the first name on the team sheet. You know what I mean? And under Claudio, by the end of Claudio's reign, I was playing regularly, which was right. So that's my normality for me now.
Yeah.
Then Jose's come in, and I've worked out quickly I wasn't one of these. You know, it was like Petr Cech, JT, Makelele, Frank, Drogba, 5 players. You know, and then I thought, okay, I worked out. I think some players didn't work. Players like Adrian Mutu, you know, got shifted on quite quickly. He couldn't process that he wasn't the main man. I think that's why a lot of, you know, you get them type of players who can't play at big clubs. They can't operate unless they got a manager giving them the license, putting them around. But I worked out quite quickly, right? Okay, that's my situation. That's where I am. I'm going to prove to you that can be better than these players for this game. And that's all I held on to that. I trained hard. And like I said, under Jose's reign, I started all the big games. All the big games I started. You know, he rotates around because that's modern football.
Yeah.
And back then it was like, if he wasn't starting, it was like, oh, you know, but look at Pep now. Who's Pep's best team? he might start Mahrez for a couple of weeks. No one's like, because it's a squad game now. Back then, it was still a new thing for it being a squad game. So to adjust to it mentally was tough. But, you know, I could see something special and I wanted to be part of it.
And when you look back, you know, we look at the likes of Man City and Liverpool, and we almost kind of are used to that dominance and those brilliant defensive displays that those teams have shown us in the last few seasons. But you conceded 15 goals all season in that Premier League title winning season. I mean, that when you think back, that is remarkable, isn't it? Just how good you were. When did you realise that the title was actually up for grabs that season?
Good question. We felt it from the start.
Really?
Well, I honestly thought, like, from the first day of pre-season, I looked around at my teammates and I looked at the players that had just come in, Robben. But bearing in mind we finished second, then we signed Drogba, Arjen Robben, Paulo Ferreira, Carvalho. I'm looking around at them going, well, they're even better than what we had last year. And we weren't far off it. We got to the semi-finals of Champions League. So I was like, we are... And then we beat Manchester United on the first game. It was a tight game. And then I just felt from the moment we walked in that we was going to do it.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And what was the party like when it finally happened?
Party was good. Again, talking about emotional moments, because the Carling Cup we won, the League Cup against Liverpool in a fantastic game, was great.
Yeah.
And that really meant a lot. But then we won the league up at Bolton.
And you know, Jose said he knew it was going to be won at Bolton. Did he ever tell that to the players? Did he ever share that with you guys?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he did, Jake. Like, I can't be 100% sure. Do you know what I mean? Because it's been written about so much. So, but
you don't know whether you've read it and then.
Yeah.
I know the feeling.
But I know I know there was a date put up on a calendar and said we're going to win the league title on this day.
That would be it then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, if it is, he's. I remember something what he done once. Right, we was playing a game, and you could. Paulo Ferreira scored in the game, right? So it weren't many for Paulo, and it was a cup game against a lower league team. So you think a manager would take his foot off the pedal, but he had this set piece. He said, Paulo will score today because we're going to do this, and I'm going to get Paulo to make this run around and I'm like, Paulo ain't scoring. Do you know what I mean? I've seen him. He's a great, fantastic player, but he's not going to score a goal. He scored the goal, and I remember just thinking to myself, like, is this fella human? Like, he just keeps predicting things. You know, has he got a crystal ball somewhere? But I've gone off on a tangent there. Where was I?
We were talking about the Bolton thing, which is
sorry,
it's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So his
foresight, which I think gives you confidence.
Yeah.
Like, there's this guy, he knows what's going to happen, so we believe him.
Yeah, some of the Bolton thing. So we won the league. Frank scored the goal. It was in between the semi-finals of the Champions League.
Yeah.
And I was one of two players rested for the Bolton game. Played in the semi-final the week before. Again, like rotation. Like, the spine of the team stayed. And then I come out for the Bolton game. And then I went back in for the Liverpool game, which we lost eventually. So the ghost goal, Garcia. And then, so we won it up at Bolton. And as much as, with all respect, you dream of doing these things, winning these achievements at home, didn't you? So and then we had the big game, so we didn't really party. We had a couple of beers in the dressing room. It was going off. I remember the Chelsea fans surrounding the bus after the game, because it's 50 years, Jake. You know what I mean? This is like, they didn't want us to leave the stadium, and I got up through the coach, the little fire exits. I've opened that, and I've got on top of the coach with champagne. And I'm spraying the Chelsea fans with champagne on top of the coach. But as I'm spraying it, it's obviously going on the top of the coach. So I've slipped. I nearly fell off the coach. Imagine Jose's rested me for the game to be ready for the semi-final. We're sitting on the coach, and then he sees his winger fall off the top of the coach, and I would have definitely missed the game. But yeah, so that was it. That was a good day.
Yeah,
and I think we played computer in it later on, so it wasn't the party we all expected.
Nice. The following season, you were even better as a team, even more dominant. You were named in the PFA Team of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
What was the difference for you personally that season? Do you feel like it took not necessarily time to get to that level, but you were constantly improving under Jose Mourinho?
Yeah, constantly improving. We was improving as a team.
Yeah.
That was the season I think in my career I enjoyed the most. Well, I wouldn't say it was my best season how I performed. There were some great seasons at West Ham and other seasons at Chelsea, but in terms of the fact we won the league and we did it in such style, and it culminated with scoring the great goal against Manchester United and our BT colleague and friend Rio Ferdinand. But it just was. There was this. I say I probably enjoyed that season the most.
Yeah,
we felt invincible.
And what about your relationship at this point with Jose Mourinho? Because the person that gave you all this is someone that you will always revere. He obviously knew how to get the best out of you. But then also there was a couple of quite public dressing downs as well for you. I mean, you scored. Was it against Liverpool? You scored, and he still kind of tore a strip off you afterwards. I'm just interested in what you made of the way that he chose to manage you, because I'm sure it was different depending on which player we're talking about.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, all the time I was the go-to guy to get the dressing down.
Right. Did you mind?
At the time, it annoyed me.
Yeah.
I was angry. And I was like wanting to prove him well. So it worked. In that sense, he got my personality better than any other manager I've ever played. At that point in my career, how I was at 31, 32, maybe I needed a different way of being approached at. You know what I mean? But at that time, 23, 24, 25, he was just like, you see a jockey on a horse and you think, oh, he's being a bit free with a whip there and he might get pulled up on that. I think that was probably what Jose was thinking with me. Right. And when I spoke to him since, he was like, yeah, he said, I wanted to push you because I see what you can do. And I wanted to just keep pushing you, keep asking questions, and he probably sensed that wasn't, I'll take it as a compliment because I don't think he sensed the fragility in me. He probably thought he could say them things because I would have been tough enough to take them. And I was, because I responded, Yeah. Again, frame it in 2022 in how we treat each other, how we talk to each other and all that. You probably get people telling you it wasn't the right thing to do. But I'm telling you, from someone who experienced it, it was the right things to do. And sometimes you need a little bit of pain, a little bit of discomfort to come through it. And, I look back at it only with fond memories.
And also he knew you could deal with it as well. I think that's one of the skills of man management is that some players...
But again, Jake, there's no manager who... I can think you can deal with it.
Yeah.
I don't know you can deal with it. There's no playbook for this. Like, he could have said that to me. And
could have broken you.
Could have broken me.
Yeah.
And in this current climate, that would have been deemed disastrous for him as a manager. But I think the current managers now don't have at their disposal the tools that the managers of 20 years had to get the best out of people. They'd have to play by a certain way. And it's a power struggle, isn't it? You talk about these big clubs.
Was there a point where you thought it was too much? Where you thought, come on, man, lay off me?
No. No and yes. Like, I'd moan about it, get the ump, have a row with him, which we did, lots of times. We had rows.
Right. What would you be saying to him in those?
I was to say, well, I'll always so I'm happy to talk about anything in my career, but sometimes there's some things are sacred, and, some things we said to each other wouldn't have been very pleasant.
Yeah.
Not really bad, but what goes between a manager and a player, we'll keep that in private. But nothing disastrously bad, but we just frank conversations.
But you were happy to sort of bring up the conversation of...
Jake, I did not have any... I just couldn't understand players who didn't go and speak to managers. Like, if I had a problem with someone on any level, I'd want to speak to them about it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let it fester. So managers, knocking on the door constantly. Why are we doing this? Why aren't I playing? What do you need from me?
Yeah. That's leadership.
It's just logical. Yeah. That's logical for me. Like, well, you tell me what you want me to do.
Yeah.
Then the only frustrations came was when I delivered them things and they didn't keep their end of the bargain. And then I would struggle with the relationship.
He was also really good at creating a siege mentality, wasn't he? That kind of feeling that this is Chelsea against the world here.
Yeah.
That was also valuable for you as a set of players, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, massively valuable. And you have to think of the time, you know, your Chelsea were the first real money club, you know, where we come along. We're there to spoil the party. We shouldn't be at the party, you know. So what, nobody's going to welcome you with open arms. Come in, join us, come and compete with us, come and take our trophies, you know. We never felt that way. So he what so clever by him. He's like, right, we're not going to get. You know, most situations, they say you get more with sugar than you do with salt. Yeah. And that's true. But I think when you're coming into, like, when we wanted to do what Chelsea wanted to do, we're coming to join the top table. We're coming to join the elite, you know. And he was very clever in that. That was the narrative all the time. They're against us. They're against us. They're against us. Young team, hungry team, hanging off every word. You know, senior players might have not bought into it, you know, because they've got... But we was like, we'd go to Barcelona and we'd not only want to beat them, we'd want to annihilate them because they were there and we were here. And we need to prove on every facet of the game that we could compete.
Yeah.
You know, and because the club had to show that. Now Chelsea's widely accepted as one of the top clubs in the world football. But back then, it's hard to explain to young people listening to it. It was like, we shouldn't have been there. We should have got, maybe Chelsea, a club that pops up in the Champions League once a decade, gets knocked out in the group stages, as a memorable win, all the fans clap it, and they think about it 20 years down the line. But now we're going, right, we want to win trophies. So it was so smart from him.
And so interesting for you to be there through this Chelsea, going from where they were to basically the club they are today, and you won back-to-back titles. You just missed out in that third year. He changed the mentality of the fans and the players and their whole club. And then he loses his job. And like these days, it's kind of like we're used to this. But I remember like the shock that went through the game. What was it like from yours and the players' perspective? Did you see it coming?
No. It was all new. Like we just thought, you thought it'd be there forever.
Yeah.
You know? I liken his impact to a football club. As you know how the Liverpool fans talk of Shankly in like, and you look at Shankly's record, I think I don't know if he won the European Cup. Liverpool fans would probably kill me for not knowing this, but Paisley, I think, and Fagan won the cups, but he set the precedent of what it was. You know, he's talked about it in them kind of terms. Now, Jose's reputation with the Chelsea fans, having managed Tottenham and Man United, is slightly watered down. But really and truly, from someone in there, things you see at Chelsea now, well, you can track back to when he walked into the door and set the standard, you know, and you know, because you had a blank canvas to build a club and a blank checkbook as well, you know, so it does help. It's not something he's a genius. He's not a miracle worker. He needed the money, he needed the players, but he sort of done that, and his influence is like you can liken it to a Shankly or a Ferguson because of he started something. You can a Wenger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He started something. But it's hard for Chelsea fans to recognise that because of what's gone on. We've gone to other clubs, but that's modern football now. But we need to always think that because he was that good.
Chelsea went from strength to strength, and you were unbelievable as well under Avram Grant. Did you feel a bit more freedom under him than you had under Jose?
No. That year, that year was interesting in the sense that Avram, having spoke to him last year, is a lot more... He doesn't get enough respect from what he did at the club because he allowed the players have matured into his role. We'd added Ballack, Essien, like captains. We had 6 or 7 captains of their national teams playing for us. And he recognised that, Avram, and he recognised the duress that we'd played in and that to get us to that level. And he recognised very cleverly that if he allowed us to do what we would do, we would produce.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that season is his points per game, Avram, is better than any other Chelsea manager. We could have lost the Champions League final by the width of half an inch on a post, League Cup final, and missed I think it was goal difference or something. He was outstanding in the sense of he recognised the situation. And I spoke to him a year ago, and he knew down to minute details, games of that season, moments in that season, explained to me reasons why he made certain decisions. And you're like, that ain't a man that's done something on a whim.
Yeah.
He explained to me his thought process through why he chose certain players in certain games, and regrets as well. He said like he maybe would have he could have done something different in the final, but you need to respect Avram for that. I wouldn't say I played more freely because the responsibility was still there to my teammates, but I think that might be my best season at Chelsea. I'd say personally.
Yeah.
I got Player of the Year. We got all the way to the width of post in the final. And, that team carried on with Avram the following year. Could have actually gone on again, because it was managed very much so by the senior players, which would have worked for a good few years, until the only problem comes with that is everyone was in the peak of their powers. When their powers start to wane, do you know what I mean? You had Ballack in the peak of his powers, JT, Frank, Drogba, Petr Cech. We had all the big players performing every week. So, but he was good at them.
Because you then played under Ancelotti as well. Yeah. Of all your time at Chelsea, what was the best team do you think that you played in that period?
2005, 2006 would beat the 2009, 2010 team. Purely on 2009, 2010 was probably better technically, but the 2005, 2016 was too athletic, too aggressive, too much desire, and very much like the Liverpool Klopp team. I think not as different style of play, but they had that hunger inside them. You could see, but Carlo was great. I regret leaving Chelsea when I did it 2010. Carlo didn't want me to leave, but there was internal politics going on. I got back into the side after a big injury, scored the important goal up at Old Trafford that won the title. Effectively won the title. That was the big game you felt like, and that season was the one. And he had no right to choose me for that game, but he felt I was right in that role because of how well Patrick Evra had been playing, and he knew he needed to deal with that side of the pitch, and he trusted me more defensively than the other wingers. But I regret leaving, but it wasn't all my decision. Yeah. There was things. So basically, there was a group of young players. Basically, we won the double, won the league and FA Cup. Group of young players that they thought were ready to come into the team. I don't want to name their names, but Chelsea fans will know them. But they wasn't ready. And there's people who spent money behind the scenes who want to... Listen, you got to... the harvest's got to come now. We spent money on these kids. They're ready. What a better time to blood them than when you've won the double. But there was like 6 of them coming into the squad. And history has shown that any of them wasn't at that level to go there. They've all had good careers, all good players and good lads. But they sort of culled the older players a bit quicker. Like I could have had another 2-3 years there probably at Chelsea. Ballack could have had another year or 2. Who else left? Deco. These players all played a vital role in that season. Not pivotal, but vital in the sense that... So it was a mistiming of management after that 2010 team where, things got reined back in and mistake. And if I could have hindsight, I would have pushed to stay. But I think even then it would have been taken out of my hand because I think behind us they was really keen on getting these younger players into the squad. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, mate.
No worries. My pleasure.
It's amazing to look back at that time. I remember Jose coming in and what a breath of fresh air he was. It was so exciting. I remember watching that Chelsea team win the league so convincingly. And it was fascinating to hear from Joe on his experiences of being in the camp when Jose Mourinho created such a siege mentality around them. That core of Chelsea players, Terry, Lampard, Drogba, the list goes on. Arguably one of the strongest we've seen throughout the Premier League and set the standards at the club for new recruits to aspire to. Future Chelsea captain Cesar Azpilicueta arrived at the tail end of some of those careers and told us about how the Chelsea DNA was cast from those legends.
Mentality was completely hunger in every single session. I could see they were so ambitious. They wanted to win every single day, every single game. They were never happy to lose. And, that's where you can see from the first day, which is all about, the club has been so successful in the last years. And I could see straight away the reason behind. Just it's a club that we always fight for everything. I could see that since 2012 when, there was the domestic cups, the league, the Champions League. And you could see that every single competition we were there to win. We never had like a distinction between one competition, this more important than the other. We were always, even if sometimes it didn't work, but, the ambition was very clear. And, the club has been progressing on and off the pitch with many changes, in terms of players and, and staff. And, it's so important to maintain the values, the culture of the club of winning. That, I think, or if something characterized of Chelsea is that everybody, we have the mindset to win, and I'm sure we will keep that ambition for the future.
The Premier League had new kings, with a manager and owner who changed the face of the league forever. Big money moves had become part of Premier League folklore more and more as the years went on, and we're going to take a break from our chronology to examine those deals that shocked the footballing world. Join us next time on the Premier League Storybook for Chapter 10, The Transfers.
BT Sport Pods.